In Japan, the average bullet train arrives so close to its scheduled time that the delay is measured in seconds, 24 seconds per train, for the entire year. Meanwhile, in the United States, Amtrak passengers wasted over 850,000 minutes last year, just waiting for freight trains to pass. That's the equivalent of 1.5 years of human life spent in a stationary train car. Why is the gap this big? The answer isn't what you think. Train punctuality sounds like a boring topic. It isn't. It's actually one of the cleanest natural experiments we have in public infrastructure. Every country runs trains. Every country has roughly the same physics, the same steel, the same engineering textbooks. And yet the results are wildly different. In one country, a 1-minute delay triggers a public apology. In another, arriving only an hour late counts as on time. Most people assume this is about culture. They say, of course Japan's trains are punctual. Japanese people are punctual. It's a comforting story. It's also wrong. Or at least, it's not the real reason. Because if you actually compare the numbers across 4 countries, Japan, the United States, the United Kingdom, and India, you find a pattern. And the pattern doesn't track with culture or weather, or even how rich a country is. It tracks with one very specific structural decision: who owns the track and who decides which train goes first. That single decision explains almost everything. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let's go through the 4 countries, best to worst, and figure out what's actually going on. Start with Japan, because Japan is the outlier that defines the entire scale. The Tokaido Shinkansen, the original bullet train line between Tokyo and Osaka, has reported an average delay of around 24 seconds per train. Even when you include weather, earthquakes, and every other uncontrollable cause, the figure is still under 2 minutes. 2 minutes. For a train moving at 300 kilometers per hour on a line that runs hundreds of trips a day, every day. The popular explanation is culture. And yes, Japanese society does treat punctuality as a form of respect. Train operators apologize over the loudspeaker for delays as short as 1 minute. That's real. But here's the part most people miss. The Shinkansen runs on its own dedicated track. No freight, no commuter trains, no interference. The companies that run it own the rails, own the stations, and even own the shopping malls and apartment buildings around the stations. When privatization happened in the 1980s, Japan didn't just sell off the trains. It gave the new private rail companies the right to run real estate, retail, and hotels alongside the rails. That changes everything. Because now the rail company has a reason to make the train pleasant, a reason to make it on time. Their entire business depends on it. Now jump to the United Kingdom, which is somewhere in the middle of the pack. In the most recent quarter, Britain's trains hit something called PPM, Public Performance Measure, of around 85%. That means roughly 15 out of every 100 trains were either late or canceled. Cancellations alone are about 4%. If you measure punctuality more strictly, arriving within 3 minutes at every stop, only about 81% of stops make the cut. That's not catastrophic, but it's also not Japan. Why the gap? Britain made a different choice when it privatized its railways in the 1990s. It split the system in 2. The track and signals were handed to a single national company, eventually called Network Rail. But the trains themselves were sold off to dozens of separate private operators, each running a slice of the country. So now you have one organization that maintains the track and a totally different organization running the trains across that track. When something goes wrong, the train operator blames the track owner. The track owner blames the train operator. Nobody is fully responsible for the experience the passenger has. That's the structural cost of fragmentation, and it shows up every quarter in the punctuality stats. Then there's the United States, which is where things get really interesting. And by interesting, I mean dystopian. In the first quarter of 2025, Amtrak's overall on-time performance was 72%. Long-distance trains were at 58%. The federal minimum standard for acceptable is 80%. And Amtrak hasn't met it on any service line for 4 straight quarters. Now here's the part nobody outside the rail world knows. Amtrak owns 3% of its own track. 3 out of more than 21,000 route miles. Amtrak only owns the Northeast Corridor between Washington and Boston. Everywhere else, it's renting. Renting from who? Freight railroads, companies whose business is moving coal, oil, lumber, and shipping containers. And here's the brutal part. Federal law has required for over 50 years that those freight railroads give Amtrak preference. Passenger trains are supposed to go first. In practice, they don't, because the only entity that can enforce that law is the U.S. Department of Justice. And the DOJ has brought exactly one enforcement action, 40 years ago. So, what actually happens? An Amtrak train pulls into a siding and waits, and waits. Sometimes it's stuck behind a slower freight train for 50 miles, sometimes 100. Sometimes the freight is empty cars, and the passengers, paying customers, often hundreds of them, sit motionless while the empty cars get through first. The total damage in 2024? Over 850,000 minutes of delay caused by freight trains alone. That's more than a year and a half of accumulated wait time, spent by humans, in stationary train cars, because nobody with the authority to stop it has ever bothered to. This isn't a culture problem. This is a property rights problem. Finally, India, which sits at a completely different scale than the other three. Indian Railways moves around 8 billion passengers a year. 8 billion. It runs more than 13,000 passenger trains and almost 12,000 freight trains across a network of nearly 69,000 kilometers of track. It is one of the largest single employers in the world. Punctuality across all that? Around 77% in the most recent fiscal year. Some divisions hit 95, some don't. The structural problem India faces is the American problem, scaled up. Freight and passenger trains share the same lines. Dispatching is hard. Aging infrastructure has to handle volumes nothing in Europe or America comes close to. But here's the part that's actually surprising. India is fixing it. Not by privatizing, by adding intelligence, real-time tracking, AI-driven scheduling, predictive maintenance. 12 divisions of Indian Railways now run at 95% on-time performance on lines that 10 years ago were considered chaotic. So the lesson from India is the inverse of the American lesson. America had perfect property structure for freight and broke its passenger rail. India inherited a chaotic structure and is engineering its way out with software. So why do some countries have perfect trains and others don't? It's not culture. The Japanese aren't more disciplined than the British or the Americans or anyone else. It's not money. Britain and the United States are wealthier per capita than Japan. It's structure. It's about who owns the track, who decides which train goes first, and whether the people running the trains have any reason to care if they arrive on time. Japan made the rail companies own everything, track, station, and the businesses around them, and tied their profits to keeping passengers happy. America made Amtrak a tenant in someone else's house. Britain split responsibility down the middle and let nobody own the outcome. Structure beats culture. Every time. And when you understand that, you can predict, almost perfectly, which countries will have great trains and which won't. If you found this interesting, you'll probably like the rest of this channel. We go deep on why some countries get the basics right and others don't. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got a request, a system, an industry, a comparison you want explained, drop it in the comments. I read all of them. Thanks for watching.